My name is Emily, and I'm 43 years old. I've been married for 21 years, and I have a 20-year-old son. My husband's name is Robert, and he's 55. I work from home these days. I've loved this family for 20 years, or at least I thought I was happy. I want to share the story of how I almost lost it all. I grew up in a foster home since I was 1. By the time I was aware of my surroundings, Elisa, the director of the children's home, was like a mother to me. 2 years older than me, we were like siblings. Ryan and Olivia, twins, they also came to the foster home around the same time I did. Their parents had died in an accident. Thanks to them and Elisa, I had a relatively smooth childhood in the foster home. But when Ryan and Olivia turned 17, they were adopted by relatives and left the home. For the first time in my life, I felt a crushing sadness. At 15, I couldn't cope with the loss. I started to act out as the people around me became increasingly cruel. I began sneaking out to the city at night to vent my frustrations. Even when I was detained for being a minor and Elisa came to pick me up from the police station, I acted like I didn't care about her worries. Elisa had been through a divorce. She had lost a child to illness shortly after birth and was blamed for it by her then-husband, leading to their divorce. After that, she started working at the foster home and became its director. She was the one who named me Emily. She told me she saw her lost child in me and raised me with a mother's love. But she was struggling with how to deal with me, her non-biological but emotional daughter. One day, Elisa came to me, who was living a reckless life and skipping school, and suddenly started crying. "Even if we're not related by blood, you're my child. All the kids here are precious, but I'm only human, and I have special feelings for you." She stroked my head, saying, "Emily, Emily," and started crying. "I should have hugged you like this sooner. I'm sorry." She kept apologizing. For some reason, I felt both sad and relieved, and I hugged Elisa tightly while crying loudly. As an adult, I realized I was crying out of happiness, thinking someone needed me. From that day on, I started helping Elisa actively and began calling her Mom. And eventually, I graduated from middle school and started working at the foster home. I was hired by Elisa, who is my mom, to become a social worker. I studied hard through correspondence school and earned my certification. Part of the reason I wanted to work at the foster home was because I believed Ryan and Olivia would come to see me someday. We ordered food supplies for the foster home from a local supermarket, and the delivery guy turned out to be the man I'd later marry. We started with casual conversations every day, but when I found out we liked the same musician, I felt an instant connection. From there, our conversations flowed more naturally, and we grew closer. Eventually, he asked me out on a date. My mom also told me to go, so I headed out on my first date. Since it was my first date experience at the age of 21, I was so nervous that I couldn't speak normally. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings on our 5th outing, and we started dating. When I told Mom, she said, "Finally, Emily has a boyfriend. It's about time. I feel a bit lonely, though," and blessed our relationship with a smile. Our relationship progressed smoothly. One of our best memories was going to a concert of our favorite artist after preparing dinner at the foster home. On the way back from the concert, he proposed to me. I was overjoyed and immediately told Mom, who tearfully and joyfully gave her consent. Her words about having a family stuck with me, and I vowed to love my family forever. At that time, I was 23, and he was 35. His parents were thrilled about our marriage. Even when I told them I was raised in a foster home and didn't know my biological parents, they said it wasn't a problem. He's an only child, but his parents just wanted us to have a happy family. I decided to cherish my future in-laws as well because they were part of my new family. This is because I realized that they are a part of my family, including my in-laws. Soon after, we got married. I quit my job and left the foster home as my husband suggested. I was a bit worried about leaving Mom to run the foster home alone, but she assured me it would be fine as she was hiring cooking staff. Soon after, I became pregnant. The thought of our precious child growing inside me filled me with immense happiness. But contrary to my joy, my once kind husband began to change. He showed no concern for my morning sickness and even called me dirty. He started eating out instead of having meals at home. When my in-laws found out about my struggles with morning sickness, they brought over some home-cooked meals. My husband wasn't home, so they asked me why. I thought it was normal for husbands to eat out during their wives' morning sickness, so I told them without any ill intentions. Upon hearing this, my in-laws stayed until my husband returned and scolded him for his behavior. He made some excuses, but eventually apologized to me. Importance of family remained a constant theme. I got yelled at by my in-laws because I spoke about why my husband wasn't around. When I said, "I'm sorry, I thought this was normal life, so I didn't mean any harm," I was shouted at with, "No excuses." I got scared of my husband's anger and instinctively protected my belly. The next day, my husband was back to his sweet self. He sincerely apologized and said, "Once your morning sickness is over, we'll eat at home. Until then, let's eat out." From then on, I started keeping a diary. I wrote about my baby's condition and my family every day. Conversations with my husband, who often came home late, became scarce. The morning sickness was bad, and I felt lonely and anxious. But even then, I thought it was easier than when I was separated from Ryan and Olivia. Yes, that separation was the hardest thing in my life, so nothing could be worse. Even after the morning sickness ended, my husband didn't come home early, and when he did, I could smell sweet perfume. When I asked him, "You smell nice. Did you meet someone?" He seemed surprised for a moment, then angrily said, "Who I meet is none of your business." I didn't want to argue, so I didn't ask further. Even though I'm not savvy about social norms, I suspected he was cheating. I had no one to talk to, so I wrote in my diary as usual. But his betrayal was shocking. I kept quiet because I didn't want to upset him further. Our child was born safely, and it was a boy. My husband was thrilled. We named him Jackson. Apparently, my husband had decided on this name long ago, so he didn't consult me. Baby Jackson looked just like his father. Even my in-laws said, "He looks just like Robert when he was a baby." I decided to love and never let go of the child I gave birth to, so I never complained, even when I couldn't sleep due to night feedings. My son was the light of my life, and I understood what that meant. My mom said I should come back home after giving birth, but my husband wouldn't allow it because he'd struggle with housework. So I did all the shopping and housework after I was discharged. I could do it because it's what my family wanted. At first, Jackson was attached to me, but as he grew, he became more attached to his father, and he started saying, "I'll tell Dad," whenever I said something. When I asked, "What will happen if you tell Dad?" he said, "Dad will get mad at you." I couldn't say anything because my husband didn't want me disciplining Jackson. He said, "Someone not raised by their biological parents can't discipline." So I tried to gently talk to Jackson instead of scolding him. When my husband wasn't around, Jackson was a sweet child who followed me around. But things changed when he entered middle school. He started taking money from my wallet. When I asked, "Jackson, did you take money from my wallet?" he said, "It's okay, it's his money." "Dad told me to take it from you," Jackson replied. I said, "Taking it from my wallet without asking is different from being given it, don't you think?" He just said, "Either way, it ends up in my hands," and walked away. At dinner, my husband and son were eating and chatting. Jackson told his dad that I scolded him for taking money from my wallet. Hearing this, my husband started complaining to me. "How dare you, a high school dropout raised in foster care, interfere? I'm the one disciplining Jackson." I said, "I just told him it's not okay to take money without asking." My husband told Jackson, "It's fine at home, but never take from other people's wallets. Jackson said, "I know that, Dad." Smiling. My husband praises him. "That's my boy. You get it." From then on, both lectured me, saying, "Don't interfere with what we're doing. You're just a foster kid with limited education." I wondered, is it okay for family to just take money like that? But I kept quiet, not wanting to upset them. One day, I went to visit the foster home with my mom. She was delighted to see me. We had a good chat as the kids were at school or daycare. Mom said, "Let's go buy mobile phones today, one for you too." I didn't know what a mobile phone was, as I never watched TV. But when Mom explained, even I, who lacked material desires, wanted one. The idea of connecting to the world was appealing. I felt awkward about her buying it, but when we went to the store, we got free models with a plan. Mom offered to pay, but I thought I should find a way to pay her back. I asked my husband if I could get a part-time job, but he said, "It's embarrassing for someone like you to work." So I thought about how to make money at home. I kept the phone off and hidden when the family was around. When they were out, I turned it on and researched ways to earn money from home. I learned about blogging for income and chose that path. I thought it was perfect. I could use my free time and my husband wouldn't find out. I started reading various blogs to learn more. And finally, I started my own blog. Titled, "Grew Up in Foster Care with Limited Education, Naive Musings." I wrote about my life experiences. Gradually, my followers increased, and I started receiving comments. In 5 years, I had 20,000 followers and started earning money. My days became fulfilling, but as my blog shifted to my married life, the comments increased, saying my husband's thinking was wrong. I felt sad that my writings seemed like complaints about my husband. I apologized on my blog, saying he's a reasonable person, and it was my poor writing that caused the misunderstanding. The comments on my blog increased even more after that post. Comments like, "You're brainwashed," and "Emily, you're not wrong," start appearing. I was confused and began to consider quitting the blog to avoid disparaging my husband. Just then, I received a private message on my blog that nearly stopped my heart. It was from someone named Ryan. The message read, "Emily, it's Ryan. Do you remember me? Olivia is doing well too," and included a contact number. I called the number, and when I confirmed it was indeed Ryan, I broke down in tears of joy. Ryan and Olivia had been living overseas after being adopted by a cousin. They hadn't contacted me because they didn't want to bring up painful memories. Recently, Olivia discovered my blog, and while reading it, Emily, the blog owner, told Ryan that it might be Emily. Recently, Olivia found my blog and suspected it was me. Ryan read it too, saw their names, and reached out. He apologized for not contacting me sooner and thanked me for the love I'd shown them in my blog. I truly felt that starting a blog was a good thing. I met Ryan and Olivia at the foster home where my mom works. I thanked my mom for the phone that led to my blog income and told her Ryan and Olivia were coming. She was thrilled. Now that I had an income, I switched the phone bill to my account. I set up my mom's phone so she could easily read my blog and headed home. I got home a bit late, and Jackson, now 20 and commuting to college, was already there. As soon as I walked in, he demanded, "Give me $200. I didn't have it on me, so I refused, and he started yelling and throwing a fit. Scared, I headed for the kitchen. On the way, I saw my wallet tossed on the floor, emptied of cash. I remembered the blog comment, "Emily, you're not wrong." And I began to think that maybe it's not okay for a child to take a parent's money. My husband came home and was shocked at the state of the house. I told him honestly that Jackson had thrown a fit because I didn't give him money. He yelled, "It's not your money, it's mine. If Jackson needs it, just give it to him. You have no right to it, you parasite." I finally asked a question that had been on my mind. "Why did you marry me?" He said, "Everyone else was getting married, and I thought you'd be submissive." "Just that?" I asked. "What else could there be? You think you're attractive? If you have a problem, leave. Go back to the director of the children's home, who isn't even your birth mother. I don't need this boring home life," he said, and stormed out, telling me to clean up. I couldn't sleep a wink last night. Neither my husband nor Jackson came home. I grabbed my phone from the dresser and turned it on. Emails from Mom, Ryan, and Olivia were waiting for me. They said to meet at the Child Protective Services office today. Multiple emails with the same message made it clear this was urgent. I clenched my phone and rushed to the Child Protective Services office. When I got there, only Mom was present, having just sent the kids off. She looked shocked at my tear-streaked face. Then Ryan and Olivia walked in. Both looked just like I remembered. They hugged me. I felt warm, and then the tears just wouldn't stop. Ryan and Olivia were crying too. Mom joined in, hugging us all and crying. After a while, we started talking. Ryan broke the ice. "I read your blog. Is that story true?" he asked. I nodded. Then my mother also spoke. Mom chimed in. "Have you been living in shame? I raised you to be a daughter I could be proud of anywhere. What about your parenting? What qualifications did you study so hard for?" She seemed angry but was crying. Ryan said, "If that blog is true, the problem is with Emily's husband. Marriage is a partnership. Why can't Emily speak her mind?" His fist was shaking. Olivia added, "Didn't you read the comments? Why don't you listen to them? What's written there is common sense." They all gently scolded me. Maybe I was wrong. But for 20 years, I truly loved my husband and Jackson, and it was hard to change how I felt. Mom sensed this and asked, "Emily, do you know how much we love you?" "I do. You always put me before yourselves." I thought I was doing the same for my husband and Jackson. I said I believed that true love meant sacrificing myself. But Mom shook her head. "That's not it. I'm very happy. I get happiness from you. But are you really, truly happy now? I don't think you're happy, if only your husband and child are." I thought in silence. I knew Mom and Ryan and Olivia loved me. They never pushed me away. They always listened and accepted what I said, and they were genuinely concerned for my happiness now. What about my husband and Jackson? Had I ever felt love from them? The more I thought, the more I realized I hadn't. But then I remembered Jackson's smile when he was little, and it broke my heart. Jackson was adorable. He used to look at me with a smile. That Jackson is gone now. I told them about what happened yesterday. Mom said, "You can't sever the ties with your child. Even if you divorce, your only child is Jackson." I also told them what my husband had said when I asked him why. Mom took my hand and said, "Your husband told you to leave, right? Then Emily, come home. It's what he wants, isn't it? You can do that." I think she was leveraging my misguided belief that what my family says is for the best. A belief almost akin to brainwashing. So I thought it would be better for the family if I got divorced. Even facing the prospect of leaving my family, I realized it didn't hurt as much as when I had to part with Ryan and Olivia. I went home and said to my husband and Jackson, "Let's get divorced. I'll be the one to leave." Just as I suspected, my husband and Jackson were thrilled. "Good riddance to the parasite." "Awesome! Lucky us!" Seeing their joy, I was convinced that I was neither needed nor loved by them. I thought this was for the best, got their signatures on the divorce papers, and left the house with my few belongings. On the way to the Child Protective Services office, I strangely didn't feel sad. It felt like everyone got what they wanted. I returned to what I could call my original home, the Child Protective Services office. I had a small income from my blog, and I started helping Mom while thinking about the future, especially since the facility was facing financial difficulties. One day, Ryan and Olivia came to the facility. They brought me a book publishing offer. They had become executives in a publishing company. The people who adopted them were relatives of Ryan and Olivia's father, who had refused to take them in. These relatives had vowed to adopt Ryan and Olivia once they were financially stable, and they did. They turned around a failing publishing company and grew it significantly. Ryan and Olivia had shown my blog to the company's CEO, who found it interesting and wanted to publish it. I was hesitant because I didn't have much education and wasn't confident in my writing, but they assured me an editor would help, so I agreed. From there, Ryan, Olivia, the editor, and I had several meetings and published the book. My book, grew up in foster care with limited education, naive musings, caught the media's attention thanks to the publishing company and my followers, and it became a bestseller. I started getting interview requests from the media. I was hesitant due to my shyness, but Ryan and the others encouraged me, so I agreed. Appearing on TV made my ex-husband and Jackson aware of my book. My ex-husband called the Child Protective Services office where I was. When I answered, he said, "How are you? I heard your book is selling well. If I'd known you could make money like this, I wouldn't have divorced you." I stayed silent. "How about we live together again? We could even remarry," he added. Still, I said nothing, assuming I was in a bad mood. He handed the phone to Jackson. "Mom, I miss you. I want to live with you again. I want to eat your cooking." They both seemed to have changed their tune. I asked Jackson, "Did you read my book?" He said he hadn't, so I asked him to ask his father if he had read it. Turns out neither had. I said, "Read the book. Once you do, you won't be able to make calls like this," and hung up. A few days later, it seemed they started getting cold stares from neighbors, coworkers, and classmates, even without reading the book. In a panic, they bought and read the book, realizing it candidly depicted what they had done to me. Since then, I've heard nothing from my ex-husband or Jackson. My ex-husband reportedly won't forgive me for making him feel small. Jackson, who was dumped by his girlfriend and felt down, was talked sense into by a friend. He said, "I'll show Mom that I've changed and earn her forgiveness," and decided to quit college to become a licensed clinical psychologist. He says he wants to provide mental care for children at this Child Protective Services facility, if I ever forgive him. I believe people don't change easily, but part of me is waiting for that day, since he's my child. I've come to think that blood ties don't matter. If you're connected by the heart, you can become a family, even if you're not related.
You don't have a ticket. Poor people like you can't possibly understand music. I found myself at a classical concert venue thanks to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, yet my ticket was mysteriously missing. How dare a poor person like you try to be in the same place as us? Go home. I was clearly being discriminated against, but the person who reached out to help me was my mother-in-law. Little did my sister-in-law know, she was about to hit rock bottom. My name is Betty. I fell in love with music at a young age. Being surrounded by the music I love was always a joy, but due to my shy and reserved personality, I never really played with others. I just play alone with toy instruments. We weren't a wealthy family, so taking music lessons was out of the question. In elementary school, I joined the wind ensemble without hesitation, and I stuck with it through high school. But whenever we had to play as a group, I was always the one dragging everyone down. That experience became a sort of trauma, making me uncomfortable in group settings, even outside of music. I found peace when playing an instrument alone. I often played in a corner of the music room. That caught the attention of my music teacher, who introduced me to a known musician. I was told I had a rare talent in music, but because we weren't well off, my parents never really understood or supported it. I always thought that maybe if I could get proper training, I'd be comfortable playing in a group setting. But due to my family's circumstances, that was never an option. I eventually gave up on pursuing music professionally, settling for enjoying it as a hobby. When I received my first paycheck as an adult, I went to my first ever classical concert. I was a big fan of a certain family of musicians who I looked up to and admired. The tickets were expensive, even for the worst seats. But I thought it might be my first and last concert, so I went for it. No regrets. I got a lot more out of it than the price of the ticket, and I was very satisfied. I'd love to go again if I get the chance, but I can't keep buying expensive tickets all the time. I'm contributing some of my salary to my family, and I have to save for a wedding too. As for marriage, I'm just waiting for the day I meet someone who feels right. After working for 3 years, my parents have started hinting that I should start thinking about my future. Back in the day, people usually got married in their late 20s to early 30s. My mom married my dad around that time too. Now, personal choice is highly valued. My parents seem to understand this and don't nag too much. But the lack of pressure makes me feel like I need to hurry up and get married. Even after getting a job, I'm still shy and introverted. I've been invited to group dates by female coworkers, but never really talked to anyone. Just being able to consider going on a group date is growth for me. So I decided to start with online conversations through a dating app. I met a guy who loves music and we hit it off online. After exchanging messages for a while, he asked to meet up and I agreed. When we met, I realized he was one of the members of a famous musical family I'm a huge fan of. People might wonder why I didn't recognize him from his profile picture, but who'd ever think it was actually them? His name was common enough not to suspect it was really him. And if he knew I was a fan, I feared he'd turn me down. I kept it a secret at first, but eventually decided to open up. I told him about my shyness and how I'm uncomfortable in large groups. He said, "I feel the same way." The more we talked, the more we clicked, and we decided to get married. When I told him I was a fan, he said he was honored and his smile was radiant. Things moved smoothly and a date was set to meet his parents. His family members were usually busy touring, but there happened to be one day when they were all home. I nervously entered his house and waited for his parents and his sister-in-law entertained me in the meantime. She said, "As you might know, we're a musical family. If you can't play at least a violin, you're not really part of the family, you know?" I was in trouble. I had never touched a violin in my life, let alone played one. The school's band club didn't have room for violins. That's when her parents stepped in and said if she had musical skills, any instruments would do. But his sister-in-law insisted on the violin. Then he said, "Mom, don't we have a practice violin? Can we borrow it?" And he added, "Please give Betty and me some time for a quick lesson." His mother agreed. "Why not? It'll be interesting to see what you can do in about an hour." A string instrument, and a violin at that. I wasn't confident I could make a sound in just an hour. "But trust me, Betty, you'll be fine," he said. I took his word for it and even asked my mother-in-law if she'd lend me her violin. He has a practice room and we spent an hour there. It was my first time with a violin, one-on-one. Honestly, I was terrible, but Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is a song I know, so imagining it was easy. I focused on putting emotion into my play since my technique was non-existent. "You're doing great, Betty," my mother-in-law said. "Just making a sound on the violin is hard. You've come a long way, especially considering it's your first time. You're giving the music the respect it deserves." He also said, "You moved me," and gave me a big round of applause. The only one who looked unimpressed was my sister-in-law. I guess she thought I'd embarrass myself. She never expected me to actually be liked by her mom. And so, I was accepted into this musical family. I've officially become a married woman. The relationship with my father-in-law and mother-in-law is good, but a problematic hierarchy with my sister-in-law is emerging. She picks on me, makes snide remarks, and harasses me. She's very pushy and always retaliates if I talk back. I don't have the courage to do so, but that seems to irritate her even more. Either way, the harassment increases. When the family was on tour, there were days where sister-in-law didn't perform due to the tour structure. On those days, it was just sister-in-law and me left at home. Although we had a housekeeper, sister-in-law insisted that I should cook. After tasting it, she kept saying it was awful and poorly made. Even when she told me to remake the meal, she'd throw it away right in front of me, saying she didn't want to eat it anymore. She even spills soup intentionally. Acts like stepping on the small of my back or putting her foot on my head also happen. Even during family dinners, I get called to the bathroom. "When will you learn proper table manners? I don't want to share a table with someone like you," she said. My husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law think I'm getting better, but she says, "I can't believe you can't even manage that." I don't think I'm as ill-mannered as she claims. Still, the sadness and frustration of not being acknowledged make me feel pathetic. After she leaves, I hide and wipe away my tears. Then my husband comes and says, "I was worried when you didn't come back. Wait, why are you crying? Is she giving you a hard time? Don't hold back, tell me everything." What a sweet man. I almost said, "Actually," but I heard the joyful laughter from the family gathering and I didn't want to upset him just for me. If I could be patient, wouldn't it keep the peace? "No, it's not like that. I get along with her," I said. "But you were crying." "I was just so happy to be married and accepted by everyone. I couldn't help but cry," I said. My husband seemed to ponder briefly but soon agreed. "Yeah, you're right." He then took my hand saying, "Let's continue with dinner," and led me back to the dining table. It looked like we'd finally get some downtime from my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They even suggested going to a classical music concert as part of welcoming me. Listening to various performances and interpretations from different conductors can be enlightening. They asked me which concert I'd like to attend. I recommended one that my father-in-law and mother-in-law had previously enjoyed. We found out that they could possibly get tickets through a connection they had. However, my sister-in-law says she wants to handle the tickets. She claims she has some pull with the people involved. On the day of the event, we arrived at the venue and my sister-in-law heads over to the staff entrance. After a brief chat with the staff, she comes back with something that looks like tickets. One by one, she hands out the tickets to everyone. However, there was no ticket for me. People who are broke wouldn't understand music anyway, right? Excuse me? You and I are in different levels. Know your place. Now go home. You don't belong here. My husband offered to ask if any spare tickets were available. However, I didn't want to worsen my sister-in-law's mood and make things uncomfortable for everyone else. So I decided it was best to leave and started pulling my husband away. "Wait, Betty, you're not the one who needs to leave. It's her who's always mistreating you." Mother-in-law, who had been silent, pointed at sister-in-law. "Why me? Listening to music has nothing to do with being rich or poor. People have their own ways to enjoy it. It's not for others to interfere." Mother-in-law scolded sister-in-law, who had always been cold to me. "You think I don't know? It's obvious something's been going on behind my back." "That's not true." "Really? I find your envious heart far more impoverished." Then my brother-in-law chimed in. "Aren't you always sleeping through concerts? It seems you're oblivious, but it's glaringly obvious." Brother-in-law chuckled. Sure, sister-in-law graduated from a music conservatory and has some awards, but she became complacent and stopped improving. "You have to practice your instrument every day, otherwise your skills deteriorate." "If you're going to talk about what music is, then you should first strive to be better yourself," said brother-in-law. Brother-in-law regretted that he couldn't be straightforward with his wife about her lacking skills and attitude as a musician, but doing blatant harm to his brother's wife was something he couldn't stomach. "You have neither awareness nor ambition as a musician. I think it's time for you to leave our family. I'm tired of supporting someone who shows no promise of growing." There was a good opportunity to say it. "You're one to talk, old lady. Your music sense is so outdated. I can't even listen to it. It's the sound of someone who caters to the poor, so of course I'd be thrilled to leave this awful musical family." Sister-in-law's strong words continued. She declared she would go solo, make a fortune, and show everyone. I thought people like her were incapable of self-reflection, but I didn't expect this level of rage. In the end, she stormed off, throwing a concert ticket on the ground. Mother-in-law picked it up and handed it to me. "Let's go." She took my hand and we started walking. My second experience with a classical concert was truly moving. Different musicians and conductors bring a unique vibe and structure to the same piece. I wondered why the same piece could sound so different. I discovered new interpretations and learned so much. My mother-in-law seemed to notice my enthusiasm. After, the tension between my brother-in-law and sister-in-law reached a boiling point. Attempts to compromise and start anew failed, leading to their eventual divorce. My former sister-in-law hastily organized her solo concert. Ignoring advice, she overconfidently rented a venue that holds 5,000 people. Even popular classical concerts rarely fill such large spaces. Unsurprisingly, tickets didn't sell, and she ended up buying many herself to make the hall look less empty. Merchandise sat unsold, leaving her with an overstocked warehouse. Her second solo concert was equally dismal, attracting only a handful of attendees. Lacking both talent and a likable personality, she was unpopular. Online criticism abounded. Unable to pay her staff or cover other costs, She quickly sank into debt. Attempts at street performances were met with comments like, "You're terrible, stop annoying us," and even resulted in water being thrown at her. On my end, my mother-in-law suggested that I should get professional music training, given my apparent talent. I was both surprised and delighted by the suggestion, though I felt it was a little late to start learning an instrument. But it felt like an opportunity I had given up on was presenting itself again, and I couldn't believe it. I was told the choice of instrument was up to me. I'm considering the violin, especially since my husband has been helping me with it. My mother-in-law found a top-notch instructor who has nurtured many skilled violinists. I even began accompanying the family on their concert tours and helping out behind the scenes. Every day feels blissful as I spend more time with music and feel myself improving. My current dream? To perform a solo accompanied by my husband on the piano. I'm so tired. Hey, grab me a beer and some steak.
Mother-in-law, what are you just sitting there for? Go get some beer and snacks. You're really useless.
It was New Year's Eve, and my house was filled with relatives. My eldest son and his wife had just arrived and wasted no time in bossing me around. Still stunned by their rudeness, my daughter-in-law continued with a sour face.
We haven't even gotten a thank you for the Christmas gifts yet.
Huh?
Sierra's study desk and shoulder bag, they were nice, weren't they? Or didn't you like them? The colors were so cute.
I clenched my fist and quietly responded. All right, let me thank you then. Avril, I see you've started wearing men's cologne. Avril sniffed her sleeve with a shocked expression. Mom, Avril doesn't wear cologne. Wait, you're right. I hear all kinds of things from your son, Kyle. All kinds of things. I grinned at my visibly sweating daughter-in-law. My name is Liliana, and I'm 63. I work part-time in a restaurant, and my husband of the same age is still working full-time. Of my adult children, my eldest son, Benedict, and his family live in a high-rise apartment in town, while my younger son, James, and his family share our home. That's because James' daughter has health issues. After their marriage, they rented a condo but moved in with us to be closer to the big hospital where their daughter had been hospitalized several times. Being closer makes it more convenient for medical appointments, and my husband and I can look after our granddaughter if needed. I get along well with James' responsible yet unassuming wife. But no matter how much time passes, I can't get along with my non-live-in daughter-in-law, Avril. Are you guys struggling financially? One day I finally asked her. Avril habitually drops by unannounced and helps herself to our fridge. That day she was stuffing an array of high-end hams, fruits, and vegetables into her bag.
Don't lump us in with James and his wife. We have college and grad school degrees, you know.
So you won't mind leaving some for us?
It's just a little food. We're spending a fortune on Kyle's entrance exams.
In the end, she took canned and ready-to-eat foods too. My husband and James returned from a day out to find the fridge empty and were bewildered, but we couldn't tell Avril to stay away and just put up with it. One day, I came home from work and went to my dresser, only to find my jewelry box empty. James's wife wouldn't just take my jewelry without asking. When I asked Avril, she texted back,
I borrowed them.
But then, no word from her for 6 months. I couldn't take it anymore and called her. Avril, can you return my pearl necklace and diamond earrings? They're heirlooms from my mother. I'd like them back.
Oh, I lost them.
You lost them?
Sorry. I'll return them if I find them.
I was at a loss for words, too drained to even complain as I hung up the phone. I didn't want to blame her too much. It felt like bullying my daughter-in-law, and that made me uncomfortable. I convinced myself I'd given the money to her and let it go. I had been putting up with Avril's antics because I didn't want to make a fuss. But then, something happened that pushed me over the edge. One day, I went to the department store with my second son and his wife. We were shopping for a shoulder bag and a study desk for our granddaughter, who was starting elementary school. The shoulder bag section had everything from simple colors like red, blue, and yellow to more vibrant shades like lavender and pink. My granddaughter picked a simple red bag. Sierra, are you sure about this one?
Yep. It has cute hearts and butterflies on it.
All right, let's go with this. We also picked out a nice sturdy desk with a beautiful wood grain and plenty of storage. Both items would be delivered around Christmas. We left the department store in high spirits. Then Christmas Eve came. Sierra had been invited to a mom's friend's Christmas party and went out with my second son's wife. In the evening, after Sierra's desk and bag had been delivered, my eldest son's family showed up. "Here's your Christmas gift, Kyle. The latest gaming console and some games."
Thanks, Grandma. I've wanted this forever.
Kyle's eyes were shining. He probably couldn't afford it himself. Yet Avril had a new designer bag every time I saw her. As they were leaving, Avril opened the door to Sierra's room without asking and peeked inside.
Wow, a red shoulder bag? How outdated.
And the desk looks old-fashioned. Sierra chose them herself. It's none of your business. I couldn't help but snap back. Avril glared at me.
Defending her again, huh? You think she's so adorable?
Our Kyle is way more accomplished. She's the granddaughter of two people who didn't even go to college.
If you're going to go there, then
I have my own thoughts on the matter. Avril smirked and left. I dismissed her as all talk, never thinking she'd actually do something. The next day, I came home from work and was hit by an awful smell as soon as I walked in. The source was Sierra's room at the end of the hall. When I opened the door, I was stunned, then screamed. The brand new study desk had been vandalized with red spray paint. I'm a poor elementary school student. Mom and Dad didn't even go to college, idiots. And her shoulder bag was splattered with brown paint. When I picked up the shoulder bag, my hands were sticky with paint. The hearts and butterflies that Sierra loved were now smeared in brown. Just then, Sierra and my second son's wife came home. They too were speechless at the sight, but Sierra walked past me and picked up her bag.
My bag is ruined.
Tears rolled down her cheeks and my heart ached. I quickly called the department store. After showing the pictures of the desk, I was told it was difficult to fix, so I reordered the same desk and shoulder bag. I was relieved to know they would arrive by the school ceremony and left the department store. When I got home, my husband and our younger son looked furious. Our granddaughter had cried herself to sleep. I had a hunch and asked my husband about it, and I was right. I reached out to our grandson and he kindly agreed to my request. Days later, I shared the results with my husband and our younger son and his wife. They agreed with my opinion. Now, all that was left was to wait for the holiday season when all the relatives would gather. 2 weeks later. On New Year's Eve, my house was bustling with relatives. Our eldest son's family was running late, but our grandson had arrived earlier to have dinner and play video games with our granddaughter. When the date finally changed, our eldest son and his wife arrived. Barely greeting anyone, they joined the party. They looked displeased when they saw only salad and some roast beef left on the table. "What the heck? There's barely anything left, man. I'm tired. Hey, give me beer and a steak."
Mother-in-law, why have you been zoning out? Go get us some beer and snacks, either from a supermarket or a grocery store. You're really useless.
Although furious, I held my tongue considering the gathering of relatives, and then they complained more.
I haven't even heard a thank you for the Christmas gifts.
Gifts?
The desk and shoulder bag for Sierra? I made them cute for her.
Avril smirked.
I thought they looked poor, so I modernized them. Oh, you didn't like them? They looked like they were soaked in mud. They would perfectly symbolize her grim future.
Our niece's parents are dim-witted, so she'll never go to college. Poor, uneducated, and sickly. Her life's already a mess at 6.
Hilarious. She's living the dream.
You! My younger son was about to lash out, but I held him back with a glance. I understand. Let me thank you properly. With clenched fist, I headed to the kitchen. I returned to the room with steak and a can of beer that I had prepared in case the table emptied. I slammed the raw steak in front of my eldest son and his wife and stabbed it with a knife and fork. Here, steak. Then I popped open a can of beer and poured it over Avril's head. Here's the beer you were waiting for. Mom, have you gone mad?
What are you doing? Ah, my eyes!
My eldest son rushed for a towel. No one intervened. Everyone was just stunned. After wiping her face and hair with the towel, Avril, her makeup ruined, yelled at me.
Mother-in-law, do you find it amusing to torment your daughter-in-law?
What are you talking about? But Avril, I've noticed you've started wearing men's cologne. I can smell it from the dress you're wearing. Avril sniffed her sleeves, looking startled. It's the same cologne my father used to wear. I remember it. My eldest son frowned, puzzled. Mom, Avril doesn't wear perfume. Oh, you're right. Avril pushes past her husband, stuttering as she tries to explain.
It's someone else's scent, okay?
Even though you came in the car, I shoot Avril a sharp look. I've heard quite a few things from Kyle, you know. Quite a few things. It's winter, but Avril is sweating. Her husband presses her. So you were at your high school reunion overnight, right?
Why wouldn't you believe your own wife over your mother?
The room goes silent except for the voices of the arguing couple. The relatives who were chattering moments ago have gone quiet, now keenly observing the marital dispute. Just then, my grandson walks in. He nods at me and speaks to Avril.
Mom, you're close with your private tutor, aren't you? Do they teach at your alma mater? Yes, they do. To get into a prestigious middle school, you need connections, even with teachers. Is that so?
Their son slyly takes out his phone and presses the playback button before setting it next to the raw meat. Avril's voice soon fills the room.
Oh, stop. Not now. Kai will be back soon.
We're fine, don't worry.
I'm looking forward to spending New Year's Eve at a hotel with a beautiful view.
I've cleared my schedule for that day. Thank you for always being generous.
Don't mention it. I make good money as an elite postgrad.
The room starts buzzing again, and her husband's face turns beet red. I just remembered an urgent matter. As Avril tries to sneak away, her husband grabs her arm. You're cheating on me with that college student?
So what if I am? I'm young and successful. Men are naturally attracted to me.
Avril becomes defiant.
I could have earned more than you if it weren't for Kyle. You think you're so great just because you earn a bit more with just a bachelor's degree?
She seems to realize she's misspoken.
Kyle did nothing wrong.
She tries to hug her son from behind to cover her slip, but he shakes her off.
I wasn't planning on divorcing you. We still have entrance exams to think about.
At the mention of entrance exams, her husband's expression changes. Single-parent families are at a disadvantage in exams. I'll let it go this time. He returns to the seat next to Avril with a cough. But Avril isn't done. She turns to my younger son's family.
Even if my salary's decreased since giving birth, it's still way above what bottom feeders make.
She gazes smugly at my younger son's family, who are politely enjoying the roast beef. That's right, comparing us super elites to you barely middle-income folks is just sad.
We live in a penthouse. We're at a different level. Honestly, I'm not too keen on letting our kids hang out.
I couldn't help but laugh at Avril's pompous statement.
What's so funny, mother-in-law? That's rude.
I'm sorry, but when people with zero class say something, it's laughable, don't you think? No matter if you're a high school grad or a dropout, there are many out there who are far more decent than you. I looked at my eldest son, sighed, and touched my cheek. Don't you feel embarrassed doing this in front of Sierra and Kyle?
Would you just stop?
Avril stood up, pointing at the younger son and his wife.
Benek and I work at prestigious companies, not some rundown factories like you people. Kyle will surely get into an elite middle school. We are the chosen ones.
And yet you both got fired from those prestigious companies. The room went tense.
How do you know that?
Avril mumbled. Can you believe he got fired after all that bragging?
His younger brother, who works hard as a loving wife, is way more respectable.
And to think he acted so high and mighty with that innocent face. Avril looked down at me, stunned, and asked in a raspy voice,
How did you know, Mom-in-law?
Didn't you know? My sister is the CEO where you worked. She told me you both were let go for bullying your colleagues. Gasps filled the room. The eldest son and his wife, the momentum they had until just now disappeared. Now they are crouching, hiding their pitiful faces. What about the lawsuit from your subordinate for causing depression? They recorded your verbal abuse. Avril glared at me, grinding her teeth.
We'll get the best lawyers. And we still have Kyle.
She moved to her son and laughed triumphantly.
My son was already chosen for a scholarship. A bright future is guaranteed if you have capable parents. Right, Kyle?
What are you talking about, Mom? Kyle spoke, clearly annoyed.
The scholarship was my doing, while you were too busy with your private tutor. Let me choose my own path.
Avril went silent, a sour look on her face. I'm leaving this family, Kyle announced.
What? I talked to Grandpa in Detroit. I'm moving there.
Don't you dare make decisions on your own. Ignoring his father's shout, Kyle pulled out his phone.
I can't live with these kind of people. I'll go crazy.
He showed a video to the relatives gathering around. In the video, my eldest son spray painted on his niece's study desk, yelling,
Woohoo! I'm going to repaint my niece's poor shoulder bag into something stylish. It's like muddy water, so it's fun.
Avril was also there, splashing brown paint on a shoulder bag. This is just insane. The relatives frowned and shook their heads. Even with their education, they're awful people. Being highly educated doesn't make you a decent person. At those accurate words, the eldest son and his wife fell silent and looked down. My grandson continued his rant.
So you got fired, and now you're planning to make Grandpa pay for my tuition? You think it's his duty to support his grandchild? You worry about losing your financial support if I move out, right?
Yeah, no more fun money.
We won't even be able to buy clothes if unemployment runs out.
Before worrying about that, think about the legal fees. When I offered this scathing advice, Avril paled significantly.
We need money even to settle out of court. Benedict, what are we going to do?
The eldest son, who had turned as white as a sheet, clung to me. Mom, lend me some money. We're family, aren't we?
You are Benedict's mother, aren't you?
After everything you've done, you've got the nerve to ask. You've got some nerve. Ignoring his parents who were being berated by the relatives, the grandson went back to his video games. Eventually, the party ended and one by one the relatives left. The eldest son and his wife, who had been abandoned by their son, snapped back to reality when only the second son and his family remained. They lashed out at me.
You're destroying our family. That's really low.
How could you use your grandson to set up your son like this? Are you even a mother? If you have something to say it now. This is your last chance.
What?
From now on, don't step foot in our house. My husband took over from there. We want to cut ties too, but since we can't disown you, we've made a notarized document. You're cut out of the inheritance. This seemed to finally shock them. My eldest son held his head in his hands and groaned. Avril's eyes filled with tears as she began to tremble. And for good reason. Our estate is significant, including a considerable amount of land and rental income from condos and apartments. I'll say it again. Benedict gets nothing from the inheritance. You'll have to figure out a living expense and legal fees for yourself. Don't bother us anymore. You're a nuisance. With these cold words, the eldest son and his wife were devastated. They had been living comfortably in a high-rise apartment downtown until the layoffs came. They couldn't afford the management fees and moved to a cheaper apartment. However, our relatives who lived in the same town spread rumors about them, so every time they went out, they got badmouthed and had to sneak around even to go shopping. Although the case he was sued by his subordinate was settled by paying a settlement, he has used up all his savings and spends his days looking for jobs to make ends meet. Both the eldest son and Avril were picky about jobs because they felt they deserved better, but they often clashed with coworkers and customers because of their arrogant attitudes. They got fired repeatedly. Avril apparently got dumped by her private tutor, applying the principle, out of sight, out of mind. The eldest son considered divorcing, but they're living together to save on rent and living expenses. Thanks to Avril's affair, she can't stand up to her husband and is subdued. Now that Avril's unannounced visits and verbal abuses towards my second son's family have stopped, we're enjoying our peaceful daily lives. Sierra's smiles have become more frequent, and perhaps thanks to her newfound emotional stability, her health has also started to improve. We're hopeful that her symptoms will continue to get better, and eventually she won't need to visit the doctor anymore. Our grandson comes over from time to time, engaging in lively games and chit-chats about school with his sister. The sparkle in his eyes tells us he's enjoying his freedom away from his parents, thriving at his maternal grandfather's home. Moving forward, husband and I plan to continue supporting our second son's family and look forward to many happy days ahead. I've kept him in this house for 10 years. He's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law, openly hostile, believing my husband's lies. My husband himself has changed from the man I once loved into a selfish monster. Is this his true nature? At this point, I don't even care. Enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck dealing with your bad attitude. My name is Clara, a 37-year-old working at a local bakery. I've been with my husband, Albert, since high school. His family has a long line of carpenters, and he joined the family business right after graduating. We got married at 24, and we're just an ordinary, happy couple. That all changed when we were 27.
Clara, the hospital just called. Please come quickly.
A frantic call from my usually composed mother-in-law at work. I rushed to the hospital and found my husband staring blankly ahead. He looked defeated, and my mother-in-law sobbing beside him. Clara, I can't move my legs anymore. At that moment, he broke down crying. I realized our lives would never be the same. Apparently, my husband went to the grocery store to buy drinks during his lunch break. My husband was waiting at a traffic light when a car hit him. His spine was damaged, paralyzing him from the waist down. After a long hospital stay, my husband came home, a completely different person compared to before the accident. We were living in a rental apartment, but then my usually quiet and craftsman-like father-in-law said, "You should live with us." And before my husband returned, he made his home accessible for us. We were financially unstable, so we gratefully accepted. "I'm home." He entered the house in a wheelchair, his voice devoid of energy. He used to be cheerful, loud, and always cracking jokes. Now, he was like a stranger. "Clara, is Travis doing well?"
Daddy, does he hurt?
Our 2-year-old son, Travis, was worried. Travis loves spending time with his dad, especially going down the slide at the park. Whenever his dad has a day off, they head to the park and slide until Travis gets tired. Seeing his dad after a long time, Travis couldn't contain his excitement. He tugged at his dad's hand as if to say, "Let's go play over there." But his dad looked sad. Before the accident, he would have easily stood up, put Travis on his shoulders, and spun around. Now he can't do that for Travis ever again. His dad is still recovering both physically and emotionally. Just then, mother-in-law shouted, "Travis, your dad can't walk anymore. Go away." My mother-in-law suddenly yelled at Travis. Travis, only 2 years old, couldn't understand and burst into tears. Mother-in-law looked annoyed. Mother-in-law is noisy about such a son. I was looking at him with a face that said something like that. Mother-in-law has been more irritable. She's probably struggling to accept the situation. "Travis, big boys don't cry. Come on, let's play with Grandpa," Father-in-law said, lifting Travis up. Travis smiled instantly. Father-in-law is usually quiet around us, but he adores his grandson Travis. For a moment, I saw a smile on father-in-law's face. During my husband's hospital stay, I was summoned by my in-laws. "So, Clara, what are you planning to do? You're not thinking of leaving Albert, are you?" Mother-in-law asked, a bit agitated. Father-in-law signaled her to stop. I wondered, do they think that I'm heartless? Their words stung a little. My feelings for my husband haven't changed, and Travis loves his dad too. We'll get through this as a family. "Thank you for your concern. I plan to stay by my husband," I assured them. They seemed grateful. I've read many books to prepare myself, but I've come to realize that good intentions alone aren't enough. Since coming home, my husband has become quite demanding. "That's not it. Come on, get it right," he'd snap, increasingly frustrated. He even threw a book at me once. "You don't understand how I feel." A phrase I've heard too many times. Seeing his changed behavior, Travis started saying,
Daddy is scary.
My son started saying things like that. However, in front of the helpers and friends who come to visit him, he is a bright husband like before. "Well, I guess I'll just take it easy from now on," he'd joke, and I felt a sense of nostalgia. "Hey, Clara, come here." When my husband calls me in that urgent tone, it's usually about his bathroom needs. I was busy feeding Travis and couldn't leave. "I'm sorry, mother-in-law, I can't step away right now. Could you please help Albert?" Even if I say something like that, it'll be awkward for him if I go, right? I'll take over making dinner for Travis. That's what she said, but my mother-in-law hardly took care of my husband. She seemed to chat with him while I was at work, but that was about it. Seeing this, my father-in-law sighed. "I'll go. Clara, sorry for always troubling you." He's gruff, but father-in-law is kind. He's also very proactive about helping my husband. When my husband first came home, he'd ask me, "What are you doing right now? What book is that?" He even helped me study. My mother-in-law didn't like that. "Clara, why don't you quit your job? Albert is in such a condition you should support him properly." That's what she said. I knew what mother-in-law was getting at. Basically, when father-in-law and I are at work, stay-at-home mother-in-law has to take care of my husband, and she doesn't like it. Even though we mostly have a caregiver for that now. He's her own son. What's her deal? Plus, Travis is going to grow up. My husband can't work properly anymore, but we still need money. "So, mother-in-law, could you please help out more? Father-in-law is helping me study, you know. We're family." Mother-in-law sighed at me. "Don't you dare make a move on my husband." She glared at me. What? Is she insane? My husband is still selfish, and mother-in-law says ridiculous things. I've thought about taking Travis and leaving many times. But my parents are taking care of my elderly grandmother at home. I couldn't think of going back there. and I didn't have the courage to live alone with my son.
Clara, you've aged.
Time flies, and it's been 10 years since my husband had his accident. I'm still working at the bakery. I'm now 37, and Travis is in 6th grade. These past 10 years, my mind has been filled with concerns for my husband and child.
No wonder I've aged.
Hey, how rude. We're still in our 30s, you know.
Sorry.
Maybe my husband has come to accept his condition after 10 years. He's started talking to me cheerfully again. While I'm at work, a father-in-law who's now retired looks after him. As for mother-in-law, she's uncooperative as ever. And lately, for some reason, she's started ignoring me. But I can't think of why she'd treat me like this. Recently, my husband found a new hobby. He started playing basketball at a nearby gym with people in similar situations about 3 times a month. It seems to be a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful to the friend who introduced him to it.
Travis, you want to come too? Basketball is fun.
When I tried to talk to our son Travis, he brushed me off saying, "I'm more into baseball, you know." Our relationship had grown distant. Travis, who once adored his dad, now saw him mostly as an angry figure. My husband didn't think he was the problem.
Isn't he a bit young to be in his rebellious phase?
He'd joke, leaving me with no choice but to sigh. Out of the blue, I got a call from my mom back home. "Hello, Mom, it's been a while." What? My elderly grandmother had passed away. She had been suffering from dementia and had been in a care facility for years. She caught a cold, which turned into pneumonia. I was told she looked peaceful when she passed, surrounded by family. That gave me some comfort. Only Travis and I attended the funeral. My parents live in the next town over, a good drive away. My husband stayed with his parents, so Travis and I took the opportunity to visit my family home. Seeing my parents again, they had aged significantly. Well, I guess I've aged too, I thought.
How's Albert doing? Are you getting along with his parents?
My mom asked, looking concerned. I felt like crying just looking at her. Meanwhile, Travis was happily playing video games with his cousins. I hadn't seen him smile like that in a long time. Well, his dad's fine, his mom not so much, I said, forcing a smile. My parents reassured me.
You can always come back home.
Knowing I had a place to return to made me feel stronger. Coming back from a quick grocery run, I find my son standing in front of my husband's room. "What are you up to?" I'm about to ask, but he puts his finger to his lips, signaling me to be quiet. Inside, I hear my mother-in-law's angry voice and my husband trying to calm her down. I know eavesdropping is wrong, but I can't help but listen, and what I hear is shocking.
Hey, Clara, when are you getting back home? Get back here now.
A few days later, my husband calls, clearly frustrated that my son and I haven't returned. After overhearing that conversation between my husband and his mom, we left his parents' house immediately. We went straight back to my parents' house. When I told them what happened, they welcomed us with open arms, though visibly concerned. "I'm not going back there. I'm a burden, right? I'll give you the divorce you want." My husband snaps.
What are you talking about? Just come back. We need to talk.
He hangs up abruptly. My parents, who were listening nearby, look worried. My dad stands up and says,
"Let's go."
We leave my son Travis with relatives and head back to my in-laws' house. Travis, sensing the tension, tells me, "Mom, don't back down." I'm touched by his courage. They better be ready for me. "We're back." Hearing this, my irate mother-in-law storms out to greet us. "What's the meaning of this?" "Oh, Clara's parents. What brings you here today?" I sense her irritation despite her polite tone.
"We're here to discuss Clara and Albert's divorce,"
my dad says, visibly angry. In the living room, my husband is sitting in a wheelchair, clearly surprised by my parents' sudden appearance. He glares at me as if to say,
"How dare you bring your parents?"
He always does this when he's unhappy, just glares at me. His mom does the same. Lately, he's been staring at me like he's watching me, wondering what he doesn't like. They're like 2 peas in a pod.
Do you always glare at Clara like that?
My mom asks, also angry. In this tense atmosphere, only my father-in-law remains calm.
"A few days ago, the police came to our house. They said we were mistreating our daughter-in-law. They left after a brief talk. Do you know anything about this, Clara?"
"Yes, I was the one who called the police," I reply calmly. Upon hearing this, my husband and mother-in-law explode in anger. See, it's all her fault. She's crazy. You should divorce her. If anyone's crazy, it's you two. My husband is nodding in agreement next to me. But father-in-law is different.
Clara, there must be a reason. Speak up.
He says this in a gentle voice. A few days ago, I came back here. Albert and the others didn't seem to notice, but what I heard was so horrifying. I realized I can't live with them anymore. Father-in-law wasn't home at the time. He looked puzzled, but these two are different. Their faces have turned pale. Do they recognize themselves? What are you talking about? Are you okay? My husband looked at me with a smug face, probably thinking I have no evidence. But my son Travis was quite vigilant. Do you want to see a video? Travis recorded this. I play a video. In it, my husband claims that I've been having an affair for years. After that, I'm plotting to take over the house. He says he's told me multiple times he wants a divorce so he can remarry someone he met through basketball. Mother-in-law is furious after hearing this. Divorce her immediately. She's even flirting with your father. I won't forgive her this time. But mother-in-law wants to keep Travis as the heir. The balcony on the second floor. The floor is old, about to give way. Can't we use that to get rid of Clara? Mother-in-law grins as she says this. That's going too far. But if she gets injured, maybe she'll understand how I feel. That's what they said. The video ends and I quietly put away my phone. Of course, I've never had an affair, and this is the first I've heard that my husband has met someone through basketball. I felt my life was in danger, so I reported to the police. That's all there is to it. But the police only said they'd listen to my story. My husband and mother-in-law are silent, their faces pale. Father-in-law looks angrier than ever. What is this? Are you both idiots? I thought I was the fool. Thank you, father-in-law, for always being there. I genuinely felt that way. Despite all this, mother-in-law starts talking nonsense about how parents should let their children be with the ones they truly love. Realizing that staying here would be pointless, my son and I start to pack up to leave. Can you believe her? After letting her stay in our home for 10 years, she's so ungrateful. My mother-in-law glared at me as she usually did and said that. In response, my dad said, I've heard a lot about you from my daughter, but this is the first time I've talked to someone and been so uncomfortable. In response, my dad calmly said, My mother-in-law kept muttering, but wouldn't stop bad-mouthing me. Fed up, I finally snapped, Enough! Who's the ungrateful one here? Good luck with your miserable life, you nasty woman. I left their house with my parents. After that, my husband and I got divorced. Some people who didn't know the full story called me a heartless wife, but I told the truth to my close friends. Word seemed to spread among my ex-husband's friends, and now hardly anyone visits him. I don't know if that's the reason, but after a while, my ex-husband and his mother started reaching out. I never picked up the phone. When they realized I wasn't answering, they started sending a barrage of messages, all strangely pleading for reconciliation. Funny enough, all the messages were about wanting to get back together. Didn't he say he found someone better? Reading his words like, I took you for granted. Now that you're gone, I realize your worth. I thought, realizing it now? Too little, too late. I told my ex-husband, if you keep contacting me unnecessarily, I'll go to the police. And after that, the messages stopped cold. I moved back to my parents' home in the next town over and opened a bakery in a nearby vacant shop. The only employees are me and my parents. My son Travis helps out with cleaning the shop now and then. Travis started middle school this spring and seems to have made a lot of new friends. He's also fully committed to his baseball club activities. Though the bakery was just a hobby at first, thankfully it's gaining a good reputation and we're getting more new customers lately. Welcome. Oh, it's you, father-in-law. My former father-in-law visits the shop a few times a month to buy bread. From what I heard, his son's feelings were one-sided. He was so persistent that he even got banned from playing basketball, which he used to enjoy. Honestly, serves him right. My former father-in-law had said he'd take care of his son. I don't care about you. Do as you please. But he coldly told my former mother-in-law. That seemed to have shaken her, and now she's actively taking care of her son, which made me chuckle. There are some financial worries, but with my parents' support, we're managing. I'm home. Oh, Grandpa's here. Play catch with me.
You've grown again, haven't you, Travis? Your grandpa used to be the ace of his middle school baseball team. Bring it on.
Watching their heartwarming conversation, I strongly vowed to make the most of my new life together with my precious family.
I had hit rock bottom Or so I thought. I moved to the city thinking I could finally live a normal life. But what awaited me was a marriage where I was nothing more than a servant, completely obedient to a worthless man. That was my wake-up call. I can't go on like this. I need to change. My name is Lily. I'm 28. I spend my days watching TV in a condo in New York. You might think I'm living the life, but it's far from enjoyable. It feels like I'm trapped in a prison without bars. My husband, Frederick, comes into this room every 2 or 3 days. He shows up unannounced, like it's some kind of surprise inspection. If I'm not here when he arrives, he loses it.
Do you want a divorce? Because I can give you one.
He becomes uncontrollable, shouting and screaming. So I can't leave this place. How did I end up like this? No, I know why. Running away into marriage was a mistake. I was born in Eureka, Orange County, California. My father ran a construction company. I was the only daughter of the CEO, raised without a care in the world. I was a good student, and people had high expectations for me. But when I was in 9th grade, the recession hit, and the company went under. To make matters worse, a business my father's best friend was involved in also failed. My father, who was a co-signer, ended up with a mountain of debt. He sold our land and house to pay it off, but the debt remained. Eventually, my father's health deteriorated due to stress, and he passed away. Soon after, my mother fell seriously ill and followed him. I didn't want to stay in my hometown, so I moved to the city. For the next 2 years, I got by with day jobs.
You have such fair skin. You'll definitely be popular. No doubt about it.
That's when I was scouted and entered the world of nightlife. Of course, at first, I didn't get any clients. I learned the ropes from my seniors, figuring out how to handle customers. Working in a hostess club was far from easy. There was hazing, quotas for companionship and requests, and even fines for not meeting those quotas. My life and skin were a mess due to the irregular hours and alcohol. That's when Frederick walked into the club. He was the CEO of a web consulting venture. An elite among elites, he had started his business while still in college. At the time, he was doing really well, expanding his business at an incredible pace. But he was despised by all the hostesses at the club. He would constantly insult us while we were serving him.
You're working in a hostess club with those looks? It must be nice, being able to work even if you're not that smart. Marilyn from the club next door is way better looking than you.
Most of the hostesses at our club took great pride in their appearance. Being assigned to Frederick meant having your pride shattered, so everyone avoided him. On top of everything, I was saddled with my parents' debt, and my life was at a dead end. I had nothing to lose. Maybe it was my genuine personality, but Frederick started to request me.
Talking to you makes me realize how human I am,
he'd say. But I had low self-esteem to begin with, so I didn't mind being treated poorly. Then, one day, Frederick asked me to accompany him and dropped this bombshell.
Do you want to marry me?
What? Why would you ask that? I was taken aback by his sudden proposal. There was no way I could develop romantic feelings for a man like Frederick, who seemed to wear his misogyny like a suit. And Frederick wasn't the type to long for a happy home or a comforting space. Was he thinking about children? Preparing for business succession, perhaps? But if that were the case, he would have just told me to have his child. I was really confused. Then Frederick said,
Look, I have my reputation and social standing to consider.
"Ah, I see."
People look down on me for being single. It's a hassle.
"So, being married would be advantageous for your business?"
You get it. So what do you say? I'll support you and even buy you a high-rise condo.
I couldn't answer right away. Is it okay to marry for business reasons? Would I regret it?
How about I pay off your debt? What do you say?
Honestly, that was the clincher. If marriage could give me money and freedom, then who cares about the partner or the reason? This is my chance. I'll seize it and reclaim my life. That's how I convinced myself to agree to marry Frederick. It didn't take long to realize that this was a huge mistake. Frederick, who was already dismissive, became even worse after we got married. He usually lives elsewhere and shows up every 2 or 3 days.
When I come over during the day, ask me if I want to eat. Don't you have any common sense? Didn't I tell you not to skip cleaning? This is my room that I'm renting. Hey, we're out of wine. Go buy a bottle of red and white right now.
I was essentially a slave or a servant, even though I was given the title of a housewife. I had anticipated this, but it felt even worse than I had imagined. Of course, when I asked for better treatment, he wouldn't listen. Whenever we argued, he threatened me with divorce to make me back down.
Look at this.
It was a divorce application form. He had apparently gone to the courthouse to get it.
Why don't you stamp it too? That way, it's ready whenever something happens.
In response, I would often retort, "Sure, why not? Shall I file it the next time I'm out?" Each time, Frederick would give me a cold stare. By this point, I was seriously considering divorcing Frederick every single day. There were 2 reasons. One, I was treated less than human. The other was that Frederick's once thriving business seemed to be faltering. He was increasingly irritable. The number of times he invited business associates to this room had significantly decreased. Also, there were now limits on the money I could spend each month, and I was being asked to economize.
Don't buy anything unnecessary, got it? I'll cancel your card in a heartbeat.
And the icing on the cake? Frederick started using me to cut labor costs. He dumped data from his company onto my personal computer.
Input this data. I'm going to take a nap. Finish it in 3 hours.
He was pushing part of his company's work onto me, who wasn't even an employee. The tasks didn't stop at data entry. The volume and complexity of the work escalated. I even found myself preparing presentation materials for other companies and managing budgets and performance. One time, a man claiming to be Mr. Pratt, a department head at the company, called me.
The boss told me to contact his secretary, so...
Secretary? Is that how I'm being treated at the company? When I clarified that I was actually his wife, Mr. Pratt was very apologetic. From then on, Mr. Pratt and I started sharing information over the phone. According to him, many people were quitting Frederick's company. Frederick's personal flaws were becoming more apparent as the company's performance worsened.
He constantly berates and belittles his subordinates.
I can imagine. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
The company's on the brink of collapse.
That afternoon, when Frederick stormed into the room, he was already fuming.
Everyone's defying me. Hey, bring me some booze.
Drinking in the afternoon might not be the best idea.
Just shut up and bring it. You're so useless.
Well, we don't have any alcohol in stock.
What?
You told me not to buy anything unnecessary. We're out of booze.
Then go buy some now, or else it's divorce.
Here we go again. I let out an exaggerated sigh. Fine, let's divorce. The paperwork has already been filed anyway.
What? You filed it?
Didn't I tell you I would? I said I'd file it the next time I was out. As I calmly responded, Frederick trembled with rage.
Fine, I don't care about the past. Just get out.
I was planning to. Thanks for everything. I had been preparing my belongings for days. Some items were already shipped out. I bowed to a red-faced, furious Frederick and quickly left the room. From a high-rise condo in New York to a 40-year-old apartment. My standard of living plummeted, but my joy was immeasurable. I can restart my life from here. No more restrictions from anyone. First, I contacted Mr. Pratt, one of my allies. Hello?
Hello, are you okay? Did you manage to get out safely?
Yes, I'm fine. Looking forward to working with you. I already received an email from Mr. Pratt about a new business plan. The business we are planning to develop is a type of matching service. We're planning to launch a type of matching service focused on night work. Drawing on my experience in the field, we aim to create a more user-friendly system. I've already gained experience in business simulations through the work Frederick had me do. I was excited for the new life that starts tomorrow. 5 years had passed since I divorced Frederick and started a new venture with Mr. Pratt. I was overseeing the move to our expanding company's new office when I spotted a familiar face among the movers.
No way! Is that you?
Among the moving workers wearing matching work clothes, I saw a familiar face.
Frederick, is that you? Long time no see.
He looked worn and different, but it was unmistakably Frederick. He seemed to have noticed me first and looked uncomfortable. Why are you working as a mover?
Could you... Not right now. I'm working.
Ignoring Frederick's reluctance, I pressed him for what had happened since we parted ways. His company had gone bankrupt due to excessive debt and a high turnover rate. The number of people quitting increased, and it was a big cause that the company stopped turning around. I'm sorry to hear that.
Why are you sorry?
Because Mr. Pratt and I may have had a hand in encouraging your employees to leave. In truth, Mr. Pratt and I had been conspiring to start a new business at that time. We actively recruited those who wanted to quit and made them our allies. More than half of my current employees were from Frederick's company. Hearing this, a flash of his old intensity returned to Frederick's eyes.
You backstabbing!
Don't be dramatic. You brought this on yourself.
Me?
You mismanaged the company and didn't care for your employees. Mr. Pratt and the others just wanted a better work environment. Blaming traitors when you didn't manage well is laughable. No company can survive without good people, and Frederick never valued his. I think it's only natural that everyone left Frederick. I'll continue to use your company as a cautionary tale.
Do whatever you want.
I continue to watch Frederick, now a mover, work hard and sweat. The man who once looked down on me had fallen so far. Life is unpredictable, I thought. Frederick's life continued to be miserable. He tried to start new ventures multiple times, but failed each time. He was abandoned by business partners and even swindled out of money. I have been asked for money several times. He even begs me for money over the phone.
Could you help me out a little?
If I help you once, you'll keep coming back.
It'll be just this once, I promise. I won't bother you again.
People change, I thought. The man who once belittled me was now begging. Talking to you reminds me how human I am.
I don't know what to say, Lily. Please.
I have no intention of lending you money. Please look elsewhere. I hung up the phone without hesitation. Since then, I've had no contact with Frederick. I later heard that he fled to Oregon to escape debt collectors. His attempts at running a business never succeeded again. He's apparently making ends meet by doing odd jobs and collecting empty cans. Collecting cans? Frederick? I couldn't believe it either, but it's true. Mr. Pratt, who happened to be on a business trip in Oregon, saw it with his own eyes and even took a photo. I looked at the image on Mr. Pratt's smartphone. Frederick was on a bike, wearing a grungy tracksuit and jacket. Bags full of empty cans were piled high on both the front and back of the bike. No doubt he was exchanging these for cash to survive. It's really sad, isn't it? Absolutely, but he brought it on himself. He never valued people. I agreed with Mr. Pratt. Frederick never valued the people around him. People are sustained by the support of others, something he never considered. He pushed people away by belittling them and using harsh words, even his own wife. As a result, he lost his company, his relationships, and now he's collecting cans. His current life says it all. It's all self-inflicted. I hope he continues to collect as many cans as possible, all while regretting his actions.
Ugh, disabled. The contempt in the voice made me freeze. Could it really be her at a time like this? I felt on the edge of despair at the unexpected cruelty. I'm Emma, 25 years old. I have been unable to walk since birth. I have used a wheelchair my whole life. Actually, I have grown used to the term disabled because of my condition. Or more accurately, I have had to grow used to it to keep living. Drivers yell at me to hurry up and cross, you disabled person, when I'm at crosswalks. It happens a lot. So, why was I so taken aback this time? The person who said disabled was Lily, who was going to be my sister-in-law. My brother Liam has always been caring. In his high school yearbook, he even wrote his dream was to be strong enough to carry up my sister. Now, that dream has morphed into him bodybuilding. In college, he founded a team and served as the captain. He even has a gym set up at home going full Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Liam announced, "I'm getting married to a co-worker and I want to introduce her to everyone." Today was set for the first family introduction between our families. The day before, I asked him, "Hey, have you told her about me?" "Of course," he chuckled while drinking his protein shake. So why did I hear such words when she had been the one wanting to meet me? As I stood there stunned, she turned away. The family introduction went on and we had dinner. But you know what? She never looked at me, not even once. Then she joined my family's group text. From that point on, my phone buzzed with her calls day and night. The first time it happened was the day after our initial family introduction, way past midnight. My phone rang while I was sleeping. "It's me." "Who is this?" "You didn't check the caller ID? Must be nice to have grown up with special treatment, huh? You really have no clue, do you?" I recognized her voice. It was my brother's fiancé. Well, it was past midnight. Of course, I wasn't checking my screen. Before I knew it, she dropped a bombshell. "We'll send a wedding invite, but I don't want the embarrassment of a disabled family member there. Oh, and since you're rich, give us a wedding of $5,000. "What? Didn't you hear me? I said, we will send an invite, but you are an embarrassment to the family, so don't come. The gift should be $5,000. "What? Please, don't make me repeat myself. You can't come to the wedding. Why on earth would you think that I'm asking you to clarify because I don't understand what you're saying? Huh? You really don't get it, do you? Well, I'll spell it out for you. We send wedding invitations as a formality. But honestly, we don't want you there. It's my first time dealing with someone with a disability and it's uncomfortable. I think others would feel the same way. We can't expose the guest to something like that, right? Especially during a meal. Could you eat in front of a cockroach? Are you calling me a cockroach? It could be a cockroach, a centipede, or a fly. It doesn't matter. That's not the issue. Her unreasonable comments continue. Also, I asked Liam what kind of person his sister is. I wanted to know about your character, he said. She's at home playing games. My brother always struggling with thinking before he speaks. Such a careless explanation. You must be surprised. You guys are rich, right? And you're just leeching off your parents playing games all the time, using your disability as an excuse. Eventually, we have to work and become independent, but you will rely on your parents until they're gone. I heard you even get an income because of your disability, so you're basically getting rich off it. At that point, it's like a disability business. You're exposing yourself to society just to make money. If you're that well off, you should give a generous wedding gift. It's only fair. We can't rely on our parents like you can, so you should give a little extra. Deal? She abruptly hung up the phone after seeing all that. I was left in disbelief. Man, am I tired. I felt like I was going nuts, but sleepiness won and I went to bed. Next morning, my phone rang early. Hey, where's your response about what we talked about yesterday? I'm not really sure what you're talking about. You don't get it? You really don't understand anything? So as I was saying, and she went on and on rehashing yesterday's talk. Yet I fell asleep again, phone still in hand. When I woke up, it was 7 a.m. The call was still connected. Are you even listening? I'm speaking the truth here. Why aren't you saying anything? She screamed. It's been 2 hours now, I replied with my groggy head. Trying to imply the call's too expensive. You think you got one over me? Just shows how little brain disabled people have. Too bad, I have an unlimited plan. Anyway, take care. She hung up. Seriously? This timing attack is just too much, utterly disrespectful. I wheeled myself into the living room to show my brother the call log.
Hey, you're a beautiful day, isn't it?
My picture-perfect muscly brother is tying his necktie with a piece of toast in his mouth. Bro, listen. When he showed me his phone, he said,
You won't believe what my fiancée Lily said yesterday. It was so touching that I got choked up, both as her future husband and as your brother.
Suddenly, my brother spoke up. What? What did she say?
She told me,
I want to throw the bouquet so Emma can catch it. Since she's in a wheelchair, I want to pray that someone wonderful who will truly be with her for life shows up. I want her to catch the bouquet.
Man, it made me cry. I instantly said, all right, let's practice the throw. We're doing it next week in that big park.
I can't believe her. She's sweet-talking my brother, putting on this goody-two-shoes act, and yet she dares to call me with her nonsense? Well, I'll look forward to it, I said, biting back my irritation and loading my voice with sarcasm. I am looking forward to something else entirely. Fine, I'll take up this challenge. I began to meticulously prepare for battle. The calls kept coming, probably because I wasn't giving her the response she wanted. The calls became more frequent, like she was getting desperate. Hey! You're not coming to the wedding, right? If you do, I'll scream traitor at you. You shouldn't come if you care about your brother. She's trying to manipulate me using my brother as leverage? So I recorded the entire conversation using an app. Since it was on speaker mode, I could hear everything perfectly. I tossed my phone on the bed annoyed. I could hear her shrieking but couldn't make out the words. Ignoring the call, I leisurely picked up my gaming console. Time for some good old monster hunting simulation, I muttered. I'll take her down one way or another. Until then, I might as well hunt some imaginary monsters. Let's go on a hunt, I said, launching the game Monster Hunter. After 3 hours, I was starting to get bored and the call finally ended. May 10, 11:35 p.m. Recorded. Duration, 2 hours, 48 minutes. One thing I like about this app, it logs the exact date and time of the recording. I chuckled at the stark contrast between her screeching and the app's monotone voice and closed my phone. When the total recorded time passed 100 hours, I was done with my game too. It was time to talk to my brother. Hey, can we meet with her parents one more time before the wedding?
Oh, I was thinking the same thing. You know, love is between two people, but marriage is between families. The more the families get along, the better, right? Yeah.
My muscle-brained brother easily agreed. And so a dinner was set up with 7 of us, her family of 3, and my parents, my brother, and me. Upon arrival, her parents greeted us warmly, saying, "Hello, thank you for joining us today." Meanwhile, the fiancé not only avoided eye contact, she deliberately blocked my path as I navigated my wheelchair through the aisle. What is she, a middle schooler? I was inwardly seething. Well, you would have to be as dumb as a middle schooler to make such a blatant 100-hour phone call. I ignored the harassment, envisioning the tragedy that would follow. The Italian restaurant that my brother had arranged for us, so I could easily come in my wheelchair. In the private room, after our parents exchanged pleasantries and we engaged in small talk, I finally broke the ice. So there's something I want to make clear now that we are all here for this family introduction. Everyone turned to look at me. My brother's fiancé was the only one who looked away. I was born with a disability and I can't move my legs. My fiancé's father nodded.
I've heard from my daughter, and it doesn't bother me. Heck, my vision is 20 by 200. No one's perfect, right?
I thought to myself, what a nice guy my brother's fiancé's father is. People who can choose non-discriminatory words at times like this are fair. I took a gamble on his sincerity. Thank you. But there are things that are often misunderstood. Here's a CD for you. I have one for my brother too. I turned on the preset tablet and handed it to my brother. He inserted the CD into the tablet with a puzzled look. 2 files appeared.
What's this?
He tapped on one. My fiancé's angry voice blasted from the tablet. Listen, I will absolutely not allow you to come to the wedding. It's not just about me, it's for my guests, for your brother, for everyone attending. Get it through your head that you're a family disgrace. Just stay away and give me $5,000, got it? Bing! Recorded on May 12th at 3:11 p.m. The recording lasts 1 hour and 59 minutes.
What the heck?
My brother was the first to stand up.
What is going on?
He looked back and forth between me and his fiancée. Meanwhile, my brother's fiancée, despite wearing lipstick, had gone visibly pale. Your fiancé here called me at this ungodly hour. I tapped the details of the recording file. The total call time is over 100 hours.
124 hours?
My brother's fiancé's father managed to utter. I looked around at everyone. Everyone was stunned. I apologize for not being able to play the entire thing here, so I have prepared a digest version for all of you. I didn't find this to be challenging at all. I used audio editing software to condense 124 hours of material. Personally, I'm quite pleased with the compelling content I have put together. I was incredibly satisfied that today I could unveil the entirety of these harassing phone calls, a true masterpiece. The digest version, a 30-minute cut, began to play. Look at you, disabled. Have some shame. Why did your parents raise you this way? Don't you understand you're an embarrassment to your family? That's messed up. Yuck. I can imagine my own parents fainting if they saw someone with a disability in real life. After all, I'm treated specially because I'm healthy and attractive. I should naturally get around $10,000 as a wedding gift, but I'll settle for $5,000, as long as you stay out of my life from now on. My brother's fiancé's voice boomed throughout the room. However, the masterpiece was never viewed in its entirety.
What kind of person are you?
My brother shouted, interrupting the playback. At that moment, my brother's fiancé's face turned from pale to deep red. Maybe she had become defiant or desperate. That's the reality, isn't it? You wouldn't understand because you've always been around family. Honestly, people with disabilities are disgusting and an embarrassment to the family. She screamed, her hair flying wildly.
Her father intervened. Hey, daughter, your dad can't see anything without glasses. Does that make me disabled?
No, that's different. My brother's fiancé's mouth flapped open and shut. She looked like a goldfish gasping for air.
On cue, my brother interjected. I also have more muscle mass than the average person. Does that make me disabled?
And my back is bent. So I must be disabled too, said my brother's fiance's mother. No! She raised her voice almost to the point of tears. My dad, my mom, Liam, what you all have is normal, but this woman is not normal. She flaunts her deformities and pretends to be weak, seeking pity and pretending to be weak? I finally let my anger explode. So what's the deal? You're admitting that long phone call was harassment targeting the vulnerable? That's not... That's when a strong, unwavering voice broke in. My child is not weak. Everyone turned to see who it was. It was my mom. You called my child weak? Do you know what she's accomplished with legs that can't move like others? She's been prepared for a life of self-sufficiency from a very young age because her legs don't work. While you're out walking or hanging out at the beach with friends, she's been working hard. Play a game with her, you'll find that the tables turn in the real world. Tears of pride welled up in my eyes hearing my mom's heartfelt convictions. I looked down at my brother's fiancé and said, I never lose at esports. Wanna play? Pick any game you want. My brother's fiancé collapsed on the floor. Stay away from this monster-like person, I told my brother.
I agree. I couldn't even imagine a wedding without my sister. Dad and Mom wouldn't approve either. Lily, let's call it quits today.
And that's how the discussion about my brother's marriage ended. His mild-mannered and kind future in-laws repeatedly apologized for their daughter's disgraceful behavior and covered all the costs of canceling the wedding. She apparently quit her job later as news of her shameful act spread throughout her workplace. As for me, I won a big esports tournament. When asked in an interview, how did you become so strong? I replied, because my legs don't move. People find ways to let their talents bloom when they have limitations. I placed the trophy on my immobile lap and smiled.
I'm Harper. I married my husband and we were blessed with 2 sons. My husband was into investing as a hobby, so I often listened to him talk about it. But that chapter of my life came to a sudden close. In the 30th year of our marriage, my husband passed away due to illness. Our sons had already moved out, leaving me alone in a big house. One day, my eldest son Lucas came over with a proposal.
Mom, why don't we live together?
Lucas had been married for 12 years. His wife Ava, while sometimes condescending, was a responsible daughter-in-law. They had a daughter, my granddaughter Mia, who was very fond of me. I thought Lucas's proposal could create a more secure environment for me, so I agreed. That's when things went downhill. 2 months later, Lucas and his family moved in. My workload doubled. Ava did nothing and dumped all the housework on me. Initially, I complied without resistance, but after 5 months, I was fed up with her laziness. Ava, could you please help with Mia? Whenever I spoke up, Ava would roll her eyes and say, Why don't you do it? You're just an old fogey who does nothing. The figure of Ava laughing out loud was really ugly. Ava treated me like an old fogey and dumped all the housework and childcare on me. Sure, I wasn't working, but Ava wasn't doing anything either, even though she was also a homemaker. I didn't want to complain to Lucas, fearing it would be seen as tattling and not knowing what Ava might do in retaliation. After nearly a year of living together, Lucas came up with another proposal to make it a 2-household home. This didn't mean tearing down the house. It meant building a separate space for me on the extra land we had.
Considering your needs, Mom, a single-story house would suffice.
Sounds good. I agreed, lacking the confidence to continue living with Ava. Construction moved quickly. It was fast from there. It seems that they had already talked to the construction company, and they immediately built the house I planned to live in. The new house was more like a storage room built at the edge of the property. Ava even remodeled the main house to her liking, but I said nothing, grateful to still be close to Lucas and Mia. I thought if Ava took on her roles as a mother and wife, everything would be fine. I was wrong. Ava continued to make me do all the housework and would disappear when Mia came home, only to return minutes before Lucas. I ended up doing all the chores for their household. I didn't want to make Mia suffer, but I wasn't happy about it. Ava had no intention of changing, and I had given up. Then Ava dropped a bombshell. "Mother-in-law, you should leave," she said. I was stunned, unable to think. "There's no point in you being here. We're living in this house now, and you're just a useless old fogey. Maybe I'll turn your new house into my hobby room," she sneered. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had been doing all the housework, helping Mia with her homework and taking her out when she had no school. I never interfered with Ava's daytime activities. Why would you say that? "Because you're in the way," she snapped. Those words made my blood boil. I wanted to tell her to leave, but I couldn't because of Mia. Ava seemed to know that I wouldn't kick her out because I cared for Mia, and she smirked at me. "Where should I go?" I asked, holding back my anger. "That's not my problem. Figure it out yourself." Ava turned away, leaving me on the verge of tears. That day, I told Lucas what Ava had said to me.
I see.
Lucas's words were indifferent, showing no surprise at what Ava had said. I instantly realized I had no allies here.
You think I should leave too? I've heard a bit from Ava about how things aren't going well, and about Mia.
I felt uneasy. I could understand him knowing about Ava and me, but what did he mean about Mia? I had no clue.
Mom, why don't you care about Ava? Mia is Ava's and my child, and Ava loves her.
What are you talking about?
Ava told me you've been letting Mia into your room to badmouth her, to turn her against Ava.
I had never done such a thing. Whenever Mia asked where Ava was, I always dodged the question, saying she was out. I never spoke ill of Ava. I never said that! I raised my voice, irritated. Lucas looked shocked for a moment, then his eyes narrowed.
You're always so harsh on Ava. She cries every day. When I said I talked to you, she begged me not to, saying it was her fault.
Lucas stood up abruptly and yelled at me. I was overwhelmed and lost for words. I had never seen Lucas this angry, and I could see he was desperately trying to protect his family. Anything I said now would probably be futile. I decided to leave quietly. While I was looking for a new place, I got a call from my second son, Noah.
Mom, if you're okay with it, why don't you come live with us? Isabella also wants you to come.
I was taken aback. I remembered Lucas's offer to live together after my husband passed away. Noah's wife's name is Isabella. Isabella is considerate and always cheerful, a lovely person. I'm sure it won't turn out like it did with Ava, but there's no guarantee it will work out. I don't want to be a burden on you.
Don't worry about it.
Just as Noah said that, I heard a rustling noise and someone saying, "Give it to me." Mother-in-law, I've always wanted to live with you. Our apartment isn't big, but we have a spare room. Why don't you come try living with us? It was Isabella's cheerful voice. I felt relieved and decided to stay with Noah and his wife for a trial period. I planned to stay for about a week, packing only a few things. When I left the house, Isabella was waiting for me in her car. She waved and ran over as soon as she saw me. Isabella took my bags and we smoothly got into the car. 30 minutes later, we arrived at Noah and Isabella's home. As I entered, Noah greeted me at the door. We chatted about trivial things at first, but then Noah's expression turned serious, and Isabella's did too. I looked back and forth between them, confused. Mom, why did you suddenly say you're leaving the house? That's your home with Dad. I guess so. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but could it be about Ava? What? I was surprised to hear Ava's name from Isabella. I thought so. Isabella sighed deeply, as if confirming her suspicions. What do you mean? Isabella began to explain her past relationship with Ava. From the first time they met, Ava had been cold and distant. It escalated, and Ava even claimed that Isabella was treating her harshly and spreading rumors about her. I had my suspicions too, but I never thought Isabella would do such a thing, so I brushed it off. Hearing this, I felt I could be honest with them. I told them everything. Noah and Isabella listened quietly. Never interrupting, I felt like crying. When I finished, Isabella patted my back and whispered, "You've been through a lot." That was enough for me. I decided to live with Noah and Isabella. Are you done packing? While I was packing, Ava appeared smiling. Her face looked triumphant, and it irritated me. I'm leaving now. I packed my last bag, walked past Ava, and left the house. 3 months later, I received a call. The caller ID showed Ava. I hesitated but answered since I was alone. Ava sounded frantic. At first, I couldn't understand, but she was saying they couldn't pay their loan. Their savings were gone, and Lucas might divorce her due to her spending habits. She begged me to talk to Lucas, saying it would upset Mia otherwise. I headed straight to my old home. Entering, I saw Lucas yelling and Ava crying. When Ava saw me, she ran toward me, almost collapsing. Mom? Lucas noticed me and looked shocked. Both of you calm down. Let's talk. I sat them down at the table. I've heard some of it from Ava. What's this about not being able to pay the loan on Lucas's salary?
Well, we should have been able to.
What do you mean? Your father left enough money to pay off this house. There shouldn't be any loan.
Actually, we remodeled the interior when we built your house, and it cost about $100,000. We took out a loan for it.
I knew that. I had told Lucas it was fine since I paid for my own single-story home. But Lucas has a job, and a $100,000 loan shouldn't be that hard to pay off, so why can't they?
Turns out Ava has a lot of debt, and when we pay that off, there's nothing left from my salary.
What? I looked at Ava in disbelief, and she seemed to shrink back. Could she really have accumulated such a large debt? How much are you short?
About $1,500 if you include living expenses.
That much? I had thought it would be around $400 or $500 at most. $1,500 isn't something you can just save up by cutting corners. Ava, since you're the one who made this debt, how about getting a part-time job? What? It's not an amount that can be covered unless Ava starts working. I suggested a part-time job to Ava to show her the reality, but it seemed she didn't like the idea. All of this happened because you left, mother-in-law. If you had continued to give us money for living expenses, we wouldn't be in this mess. I was baffled. Why should I, who moved out, have to financially support a self-sufficient couple with a child? I was so stunned, I couldn't find the words.
What are you talking about? This is what you wanted, isn't it?
Even Lucas, usually so composed, yells at Ava in disbelief. You could earn more too, Lucas. Why do I have to work? It's your job to earn money to protect the family, not mine. I was truly shocked. Why would she say something like that? Ava, a family is supposed to support each other. If there's a problem, we should help each other out. What? Why do I have to listen to this from some irrelevant old woman? You old fogey.
Ava!
Again with the old fogey. I've been living with my second son and his wife, and I haven't been a burden to my eldest son and his wife at all. Why do I have to be insulted like this by Ava? Fine, if you're going to say that, then I'll give this to Lucas. I placed an audio recorder and a large envelope on the table. Lucas and Ava looked puzzled as they peered inside. The first thing Lucas picked up was the audio recorder.
What's this?
It's a collection of all the things Ava has said to me. Yes, when I decided to move in with my second son, Isabella suggested I record my interactions with Ava. I never thought it would come in handy like this. Lucas slowly pressed the play button. Mother-in-law is so slow. I told you to clean up, you old fogey. Useless, incompetent. The voice playing back was all Ava's. Ava's face turned pale.
What is this? You've been saying these things to my mom?
Lucas had been manipulated by Ava, so he probably never expected to hear this. This is... Ava's voice weakened. I quietly moved the envelope in front of Lucas as well.
What's this?
Open it. Lucas slowly opened the envelope, revealing a stack of photos and a document. All the photos showed Ava with an unknown man.
What?
I had hired a detective because Ava was dressing up and going out almost every day since I moved in with my second son. It was more than a woman's intuition. I felt she was clearly having an affair. I was able to catch her in the act quickly and heard various stories from the detective. It seems like you've had a long-standing relationship with this man. You've been financially supporting him too, haven't you, Ava?
You...
Lucas's face turned beet red. Why are you doing all this? You're really an old fogey. Be useful for once. Instead of explaining herself to Lucas, Ava lashed out at me. Lucas, infuriated, stepped in front of me to hold back Ava, who looked like she was about to attack.
My mom is not an old fogey. She's done so much for us. You're the one who's a parasite, harmful to both Mia and me.
Lucas. Things moved quickly from there. No one sided with Ava, not even her daughter Mia. Lucas announced he was filing for divorce, and Mia decided to live with him. Per Mia's wishes, Ava was not allowed to see her daughter again and had to pay a hefty settlement to both Lucas and me. Ava had become pregnant with Mia soon after she started dating Lucas and had married without ever entering the workforce. So finding a job was very difficult for her. I saw her walking around town recently, and she looked emaciated, like she could collapse at any moment. But considering what she's done and how Lucas and Mia must feel, I can't muster any sympathy. After that, at Lucas's strong request, I moved back to my original home. Now, I'm doing my best to support Lucas and Mia. Both of them cherish me, and we often gather around the dining table with my second son and his wife. I'm truly happy.